The champagne bubbles caught the light from the crystal chandelier as I stepped away from the dance floor, my silk wedding gown rustling against the marble tiles of the grand ballroom. Every detail was perfect, the white roses cascading from towering centerpieces, the string quartet playing our song, the 200 guests who had traveled from across the country to witness what everyone called the wedding of the year. I was Natasha Coleman, and just 3 hours ago, I had married the man of my dreams. Or so I thought. I slipped behind the elegant ivory draping that concealed the service corridor, needing just a moment to catch my breath. The bodice of my dress felt suddenly tight, and I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady my racing heart. It had been such a whirlwind day, and I wanted to savor this quiet moment before returning to our guests. That's when I heard his voice. "You played that perfectly, brother." She bought every word. I froze. The voice belonged to Derek, my new husband. But who was he talking to? "I still think you're taking a huge risk," came the reply. A voice I recognized immediately. Cameron, Derek's business partner and best man. What if she finds out about the real reason you married her? My blood turned to ice. I pressed myself against the wall, hidden by the heavy fabric, my bouquet trembling in my hands. Derek's laugh was cold, calculating. Natasha? She's too trusting, too naive. She actually believes I fell in love with her at first sight. The truth is, marrying her was the smartest business decision I've ever made. But her father's company will be mine within 6 months, Derek interrupted smoothly. The old man's been looking for a successor he can trust. What better candidate than his beloved daughter's devoted husband? Natasha doesn't have a head for business anyway. She's always been more interested in her little art gallery projects. Cameron's voice dropped to a whisper. And what about Elena? She's been asking when you're going to file for divorce. Elena can wait, Derek replied dismissively. Once I secure control of Coleman Industries, I'll find a way to dissolve this marriage quietly. Something about irreconcilable differences. Natasha will probably blame herself and make it easy for me. The bouquet slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. I stared at the scattered white orchids, my mind reeling. Elena, Derek's ex-girlfriend, who had supposedly moved to Paris for work. The woman he claimed meant nothing to him anymore. Everything made sense now. Derek's sudden interest in my family's business. His insistence on a quick engagement. The way he always steered conversations away from our future plans and toward my father's company. I had been played. Completely and utterly played. But what shocked me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the strange calm that settled over me. Instead of falling apart, instead of running into that ballroom to expose him in front of everyone, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. I picked up my bouquet, smoothed my dress, and walked back into the reception with a serene smile on my face. No one suspected a thing. Why would they? I was the radiant bride, glowing with happiness on the most important day of my life. Derek found me by the head table, sliding his arm around my waist with practiced affection. "There you are, Mrs. Harrison," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. I was wondering where my beautiful wife had disappeared to. I looked up at him, studying the face I thought I knew so well. The strong jawline, the warm brown eyes that had convinced me he was sincere, the smile that had made me believe in fairy tales. "Just needed a moment to take it all in," I replied sweetly. "It's all so perfect, isn't it?" "Perfect," he agreed, his thumb stroking my hand. "Just like you." The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek thought he had married the perfect victim, someone naive enough to hand over her family's legacy without question. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated me completely. If you're enjoying the story of deception and the awakening that follows, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We share powerful stories like this one every week, tales of betrayal, resilience, and the incredible strength people find when they discover their true worth. Your support helps us bring these meaningful narratives to light. Now, let's see how our bride decides to handle her unexpected wedding gift, the truth. That night, in the honeymoon suite of the city's most exclusive hotel, I lay beside my new husband and planned my next move. Derek slept peacefully, completely unaware that his carefully constructed plan was about to crumble around him. I had advantages he didn't know about, connections he'd never suspected. You see, while Derek saw me as a naive socialite playing with art galleries, the truth was far different. My little art projects had put me in contact with some of the most influential people in the city. Collectors who happened to be lawyers, journalists, and business leaders. People who trusted me and respected my judgment. More importantly, I had something Derek desperately needed but would never get: my father's genuine respect and confidence. The next morning, over breakfast in bed, Derek was already laying the groundwork for his takeover. "I've been thinking about our future," he said, buttering his croissant with careful precision. "Your father mentioned he's been looking for someone to help with the strategic direction of Coleman Industries." I sipped my coffee, keeping my expression interested but neutral. "Did he? That's news to me. Maybe I could assist him," Derek continued. "Bring some fresh perspectives to the company. What do you think?" I set down my cup and gave him my brightest smile. "I think that's a wonderful idea. But you know, Dad, he's very particular about who he works with. He'll want to get to know you better first." Derek's eyes lit up. "Of course. I'd be honored to earn his trust." "I'm sure you would," I murmured. What Derek didn't know was that my father had already expressed concerns about our whirlwind romance. He'd asked me just last week if I was certain about Derek's motivations. At the time, I'd defended my fiancé passionately. Now, I realized my father's instincts had been spot on. I spent the morning making phone calls while Derek was at the gym. The first was to my father. "Dad, I need to ask you something important," I said without preamble. "Has Derek approached you about working with Coleman Industries?" There was a pause. "As a matter of fact, he has." "Why do you ask?" "Because I've learned some things that concern me." "Can we meet for lunch today?" "Just the two of us." "Of course, sweetheart." "Are you all right?" "I will be," I said firmly. "I promise." My second call was to Miranda Kellaway, an investigative journalist who had bought several pieces from my gallery. Miranda specialized in corporate malfeasance and had a reputation for thorough, devastating exposés. "Natasha, how was the wedding?" "I saw the photos in the society pages. Absolutely stunning." "Thank you, Miranda. Actually, I'm calling because I may have a story for you. Can we meet this afternoon?" The third call was to Marcus Chin, a private investigator who had helped me authenticate some questionable artwork in the past. Marcus was discreet, thorough, and completely trustworthy. "I need you to look into someone for me," I told him. "Derek Harrison. I need to know everything. His financial situation, his business dealings, his personal relationships. Everything. How deep do you want me to dig?" "All the way to bedrock." By the time Derek returned from the gym, I had set 3 separate investigations in motion. He found me curled up on the sofa with a book, looking every inch the contented newlywed. "What did you do while I was gone?" he asked, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "Just some light reading," I replied, holding up a novel. "I'm feeling so relaxed. It's nice to have nowhere to be and nothing to worry about." If only he knew how far from the truth that was. The lunch with my father confirmed my worst fears and gave me hope in equal measure. I had my doubts about Derek from the beginning, Dad admitted over our salads. Something about him struck me as calculating. "But you seem so happy, and I didn't want to interfere." "Your instincts were right," I said quietly, then told him everything I'd overheard at the reception. My father's face darkened as I spoke. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I'm proud of you," he said finally. "Proud?" "Dad, I married a man who's trying to steal our company." "You did," he agreed. "But instead of falling apart, you're fighting back. That tells me everything I need to know about the woman you've become." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What do you need from me?" "Time," I said. "And perhaps a bit of theater." "Derek expects you to gradually warm up to him and eventually offer him a position. I need you to play along, at least for now. Consider it done. But Natasha, be careful. If Derek realizes what you're doing." "He won't," I interrupted. "He's so convinced of my naivety that he's not even watching for signs of suspicion. That's his weakness." The meeting with Miranda that afternoon was equally productive. "A con artist targeting wealthy families through marriage," she mused, taking notes as I spoke. "It's not uncommon, but it's notoriously difficult to prove. Unless..." She looked up at me sharply. "You said he mentioned someone named Elena." "His ex-girlfriend. Apparently, she's been waiting for him to divorce me so they can be together." Miranda's eyes gleamed. "If we can establish a pattern of this behavior, other women he's targeted, other families he's infiltrated, we might have something. Let me make some calls." By the end of the week, the pieces were falling into place faster than I dared hope. Marcus had uncovered Derek's real financial situation. He was deeply in debt, having borrowed heavily to maintain his facade of success. He'd also discovered that Derek had been in relationships with 3 other women from wealthy families over the past 5 years, each relationship ending abruptly when the women became suspicious or their families grew protective. Miranda had tracked down 2 of those women. Both were willing to share their stories on record. But the most damaging discovery came from an unexpected source. I was having coffee with my friend Rachel, telling her about my suspicions, when she went pale. "Natasha," she said slowly, "I think I need to tell you something. Last month, at the Morrison Charity Gala, I saw Derek with another woman. They seemed very intimate." "What did she look like?" "Tall, dark hair, elegant. She was wearing a stunning red dress with a distinctive emerald necklace." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Derek's social media, looking for any trace of Elena. Finally, I found her in the background of one of his older photos. Tall, dark-haired, and wearing the exact emerald necklace Rachel had described. "That's her," Rachel confirmed. "Natasha, they were definitely together." I almost came over to say hello, but something about their body language stopped me. So Derek was still seeing Elena, even after our marriage. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. That evening, I watched Derek closely as he scrolled through his phone during dinner. He was texting someone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. When he thought I wasn't looking, he smiled, a soft, genuine expression I'd rarely seen him direct at me. "Who are you texting?" I asked casually. "Just Cameron," he replied without looking up. "Work stuff." Another lie. I was beginning to wonder if Derek was capable of telling the truth about anything. "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I have some exciting news." Derek's attention snapped to me. "Oh!" "Dad called this afternoon. He wants to invite you to join him for the quarterly board meeting next week. He's considering offering you a consulting position." Derek's eyes lit up with undisguised greed. "Really? That's incredible news." "I told him how brilliant you are, how much insight you could bring to the company," I continued. He was very impressed. "Natasha, this is perfect," Derek said, reaching across the table to take my hands. "This could be the beginning of something amazing for us." "I hope so," I replied, allowing my voice to carry just the right note of excitement. What Derek didn't know was that the board meeting was real, but it wasn't going to go the way he expected. The morning of the board meeting, I woke early and dressed carefully in a navy business suit, armor for the battle ahead. Derek was practically vibrating with excitement as he prepared for what he thought would be his triumphant entry into Coleman Industries. "Nervous?" I asked as we shared coffee. "A little," he admitted. "I want to make a good impression." "You will," I assured him. "Just be yourself." The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. We arrived at Coleman Industries together, Derek's hand possessive on my back as we walked through the marble lobby. I could see him taking it all in, the expensive artwork, the bustling atmosphere of success, the knowledge that all of this could soon be his. The boardroom was already full when we entered. My father sat at the head of the polished conference table, flanked by the company's key executives and board members. But there were also some faces Derek wouldn't recognize. Miranda, with her recorder and notepad, and Detective Sarah Morrison, whom I'd met through one of Marcus's contacts. Derek noticed the strangers, but didn't seem alarmed. He probably assumed they were consultants or potential business partners. "Derek," my father said formally, "please have a seat." Derek settled into the chair beside me, his confidence evident in every gesture. He truly believed he was about to claim his prize. "Before we begin," my father continued, "I think it's important that everyone here understands exactly why we're gathered today." He pressed a button, and the wall-mounted screen came to life. On it was a photo of Derek with Elena, taken just 2 days ago at an upscale restaurant downtown. They were holding hands across the table, lost in each other's eyes. Derek's face went white. "This investigation began when my daughter discovered some disturbing information about your true intentions, Derek," my father said calmly. "What we found exceeded even our worst expectations." Miranda leaned forward. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Miranda Kellaway from Financial Tribune. We've been investigating a pattern of fraud targeting wealthy families through calculated marriages. Your name has come up in connection with several cases." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Miranda consulted her notes. Because we have statements from Jennifer Walsh, whose family you targeted 2 years ago, and Christina Hartwell, who broke off her engagement to you when she discovered your debts. Both women tell remarkably similar stories about how you pursued them specifically because of their family wealth. Detective Morrison spoke up. Mr. Harrison, we also have evidence of ongoing fraud related to your business dealings. Falsified client lists, inflated revenue reports, misrepresentation of assets. These are serious criminal charges. I watched Derek's carefully constructed facade crumble in real time. The confident businessman disappeared, replaced by a panicked man who was finally seeing the consequences of his actions. Natasha, he said desperately, turning to me. You have to believe me. I love you. Everything else is just complicated. I looked at him for a long moment, studying the face that had convinced me to trust him with my heart and my future. Then I smiled, not the sweet, naive smile he was used to, but something altogether sharper. Derek, I said quietly, the only thing I believe is that you're exactly who I thought you were after our wedding reception. A liar, a fraud, and a man who seriously underestimated his victim. His face went slack with shock. You knew. I've known since our wedding night, I replied. I heard everything. Your conversation with Cameron, your plans for my father's company, your promises to Elena. I've spent the last 3 weeks documenting every lie you've told and every law you've broken. Derek looked around the room at the faces staring back at him, my father's stern disapproval, the board members' disgust, Miranda's professional interest, Detective Morrison's calm authority. But why? He whispered. Why didn't you just confront me? I stood up, smoothing my skirt with steady hands. Because confrontation would have given you a chance to spin another story, to manipulate the situation, to potentially escape consequences. This way, there's nowhere to run and no lies left to tell. Detective Morrison was already standing, handcuffs in hand. Derek Harrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit theft. As they read him his rights, Derek looked at me one last time. The charming mask had completely fallen away, revealing the calculating predator underneath. You're not the woman I married, he said bitterly. No, I agreed. I'm not. I'm much stronger than that woman ever was. After Derek was led away in handcuffs, the boardroom fell silent. My father came over and put his arm around my shoulders. Are you all right? He asked gently. I considered the question. 3 weeks ago, discovering Derek's betrayal would have destroyed me. I would have seen it as proof of my own inadequacy, my inability to inspire genuine love. Now, I felt something entirely different. Relief. Pride. A deep satisfaction that came from refusing to be a victim. I'm better than all right, I said honestly. I'm free. The divorce proceedings were swift and decisive. Derek had no grounds to contest anything, given his criminal charges and the mountain of evidence against him. I kept my maiden name and my dignity. Elena, it turned out, had been completely unaware of Derek's pattern of targeting wealthy women. When Miranda contacted her for the story, she was horrified to learn the truth about the man she'd been waiting for. The last I heard, she had moved back to Paris and started fresh. The story Miranda wrote became a sensation, exposing a network of marriage-based fraud schemes targeting affluent families across the country. Several other victims came forward, and law enforcement opened investigations in multiple states. As for me, I threw myself back into my gallery work with renewed passion. But now I wasn't just showcasing beautiful art. I was using my platform to tell stories about resilience, about women who had overcome deception and betrayal to build something meaningful. 6 months after Derek's arrest, I hosted an exhibition called Unveiled, The Art of Truth. It featured work by artists who had experienced major life upheavals and channeled their pain into powerful creative expression. The opening night was packed. People came not just to see the art, but to hear the story behind it. I stood before the crowd, no longer the naive bride who had trusted blindly, but a woman who had learned to see clearly. Art has the power to reveal truth, I told the gathered crowd. Sometimes that truth is beautiful, and sometimes it's painful. But it's always necessary. I saw my father in the audience, beaming with pride. Miranda was there too, along with several of the women whose stories had helped bring Derek to justice. People who had become friends through shared experiences of betrayal and recovery. As the evening wound down, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous, almost frightened. "Ms. Coleman," she said hesitantly, "I read the article about your husband, your ex-husband. I think I might be in a similar situation." I took her hands in mine, feeling their tremor of fear and uncertainty. "Tell me," I said gently. "Tell me everything." And so the cycle began again. Not of victimization, but of empowerment. Of women helping women recognize their worth and find their strength. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. I didn't attend the sentencing, but Miranda told me he looked smaller somehow, diminished by the loss of his carefully constructed facade. I never saw him again, and I never wanted to. Instead, I focused on building something real. The gallery became a hub for survivor advocacy. I started a foundation that provided legal and financial assistance to people escaping fraudulent relationships. I wrote a book about recognizing manipulation and finding the courage to fight back. Through it all, I remembered that moment behind the draping at my wedding reception, the moment when I first heard the truth about the man I'd married. It had felt like the end of everything I'd believed in, but it had actually been the beginning of everything I was meant to become. The naive woman who had walked down the aisle believing in fairy tales was gone. In her place stood someone wiser, stronger, and infinitely more capable of genuine happiness. Someone who would never again mistake smooth words for sincere intentions. Someone who had learned that the most beautiful truth is the one you discover about yourself, that you are stronger, smarter, and more resilient than anyone who tries to diminish you could ever imagine. And that knowledge, I realized, was worth more than any fairy tale ending could ever be. Derek had thought he was marrying the perfect victim. Instead, he had created the perfect adversary, someone with the intelligence to outmaneuver him, the resources to expose him, and the strength to rebuild her life on her own terms. In the end, his greatest mistake wasn't underestimating my family's wealth or my father's business acumen. It was underestimating me. And that mistake had cost him everything. Natasha's story reminds us that sometimes our darkest moments become the catalysts for our greatest transformations. Her journey from naive bride to empowered advocate shows us that strength isn't something we're born with. It's something we discover when we refuse to let others define our worth. What did you think of Natasha's choice to gather evidence before confronting Derek? Was she right to orchestrate his downfall so methodically? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about resilience, betrayal, and the incredible courage it takes to reclaim your life. Every story we share is a reminder that no matter how dark things seem, you have the power to write your own ending.